Beneath a quiet Turkish landscape lies a hidden city built for 20,000 people. This is the massive underground sanctuary of Derinkuyu, an ancient masterpiece of survival carved from solid rock. By the end of this journey, you will understand the incredible engineering and desperate history behind one of humanity's most profound shelters. We will uncover who built this labyrinth and what terrifying threat forced an entire community to live in permanent darkness. How far would you go to protect everything you hold dear? The year was 1963, and in the heart of Turkey's Cappadocia region, a man decided to do some home improvements. He was working in his cellar, a space carved from the region's soft volcanic rock known as Tuff, when he made a discovery that would change our understanding of ancient engineering forever. While knocking through a wall, his tools did not meet the expected resistance of solid stone. Instead, they broke through into empty space, revealing a dark, cool draft from a mysterious opening. What he had assumed was the back of his cellar was in fact a sealed doorway, a forgotten portal. With a light, he peered into the darkness, and the beam revealed not just a small cavity, but the beginning of a tunnel descending steeply into the earth. This was no storage pit, it was an entrance. That single moment of curiosity in a family basement ripped open a seal on history, leading directly into the first chambers of the lost underground city of Derinkuyu. Word of the find spread quickly to local authorities and archaeologists. Initial investigations confirmed this was far more than a natural cave. They found themselves in a man-made room with smooth walls, carved niches, and ventilation shafts that spoke of careful planning. Following the tunnels, they discovered more rooms, each connected like cells in a honeycomb, and staircases leading even deeper. The sheer scale began to dawn on them. This was not a small hideout, but a vast, multi-level complex. The homeowner's simple renovation project had accidentally unlocked the front door to a subterranean world that had been silent for centuries. It is a powerful reminder that our planet still holds profound secrets, often resting just beneath our feet, concealed by time and a single layer of plaster or stone. The real question waiting in that darkness was just how deep this rabbit hole would go. As archaeologists ventured deeper, the true magnitude of the discovery became overwhelming. They were not exploring a simple shelter, but navigating a vertical metropolis carved in reverse. Derinkuyu descends an astonishing 18 levels, plunging more than 280 feet straight down into the Earth's crust. To put that in perspective, that is the height of a 25-story building, but built entirely underground. This was a multi-level masterpiece of survival, each floor serving a distinct and vital purpose for a community in hiding. The upper levels closest to the surface functioned as a buffer zone. Here, archaeologists found expansive stables, with stone rings still anchored in the walls where animals would have been tethered. This was a clever design, keeping the valuable livestock within the safety of the walls but separate from the main living areas below. Next came vast storage chambers, carved to hold grain, oil, and preserved food, the essential supplies that would sustain life during a long confinement. As the staircases spiral deeper, the environment changes. The air grows cooler and remarkably still. The levels here transition into the heart of the city, with countless living quarters, family rooms carved directly into the rock, their walls smoothed by generations of hands. Further down still, the community spaces emerge, including chapels with simple crosses etched into the stone walls, and large communal halls where people could gather away from the cramped confines of their private rooms. This intricate vertical zoning reveals a stunningly sophisticated plan. The architects were not just digging holes, they were engineering an entire ecosystem in stone. They had to solve immense problems like ensuring structural stability across 18 floors of excavated rock, preventing a catastrophic collapse. They engineered a network of ventilation shafts, some stretching all the way to the surface, which provided a constant, subtle exchange of air to prevent stagnation and allow for fires to be lit for cooking and warmth. They tapped into an underground river to create wells, securing a fresh water supply that could not be poisoned or cut off by an enemy above. Every aspect of this design points to a society that was not planning for a brief scare, but for a prolonged siege that could last for months. The sheer labor involved is almost incomprehensible. This entire city was carved room by room, corridor by corridor, using simple hand tools of iron and stone. The volume of rock removed would fill thousands of large trucks, all hauled to the surface by human hands. This was a project that spanned generations, a testament to a collective determination to secure a future against an existential threat. What kind of fear or what kind of foresight could possibly motivate such a monumental, centuries-long effort? The answer lies not just in the stones, but in the whispers of history that echo through these silent halls. But carving out space was only half the battle for survival. A city of 20,000 people needs to breathe, and sealed deep within the earth, the air would become stale, damp, and unlivable within days. The builders of Derinkuyu faced this invisible enemy with one of their most brilliant innovations, a hidden network of ventilation shafts that acted as the city's lungs. More than 50 of these narrow, vertical tunnels were drilled from the deepest chambers all the way up to the surface, some plunging over 200 feet through solid rock. Think of it like a series of sophisticated straws, each one drawing down fresh, cool air from the world above and allowing the warm, used air from the crowded rooms to rise and escape. This was natural air conditioning, engineered centuries before the concept even had a name. The stable temperature of the deep rock, combined with this constant, gentle airflow, created a surprisingly comfortable environment, one that could prevent illness and sustain life for months on end. Yet this life-giving system also represented the city's greatest vulnerability. An enemy above ground could simply drop smoke or worse into these openings, turning the sanctuary into a tomb. So the builders employed cunning strategy. They constructed these vital shafts in remote, hidden locations, often disguising their surface openings among natural rock formations or in areas difficult to access. Some researchers believe the shafts may have been capped with large, heavy millstones that could be rolled into place to seal them shut in an emergency. This delicate balance between openness for survival and secrecy for security highlights the profound anxiety woven into the city's design. Every breath of fresh air was a calculated risk, a necessary connection to a surface world that had become hostile. The presence of this extensive, carefully planned network tells us one thing with absolute clarity. The people who built Derinkuyu were not preparing for a temporary storm. They were engineering a new normal, a permanent reality where the sky was a memory and the deep, breathable dark was home. Yet all the air and water in the world would mean nothing if the enemy could simply walk in. For a sanctuary to survive, its doors must be unbreakable. At Derinkuyu, the doors were not just barriers, they were brilliant feats of engineering that transformed the tunnels themselves into traps and fortresses. The most iconic of these are the massive rolling stone doors, great circular slabs carved from a single piece of volcanic rock. Each one weighs several hundred pounds and stands about 5 feet high, shaped like a giant millstone. They were not hung on hinges but set into specially carved grooves in the floor and ceiling. When danger approached, the inhabitants inside could roll these colossal stones across the corridor, slotting them perfectly into a recess in the opposite wall, creating a seal as solid as the mountain itself. But their genius lies in their details. Each door has a small, carefully carved hole right in its center. This served multiple critical purposes. First, it was a communication port, allowing voices to pass through the sealed barrier to coordinate with people on the other side. More crucially, it could function as a defensive loophole. If an enemy managed to breach the outer defenses and reach a sealed door, a defender inside could use that narrow opening to wield a spear or pour something undesirable onto anyone trying to dislodge the stone from the outside. The design guaranteed that control remained solely with those within the secured area. The doors could only be rolled open from the inside, making every passageway a potential choke point controlled by the defenders. This system allowed for a devastating defensive strategy known as compartmentalization. Imagine if an attacking force did manage to break through the main entrance and pour into the upper levels. The defenders could simply retreat deeper, rolling these great stone doors shut behind them at each major junction. They could seal off entire infected sections, sacrificing some territory to save the whole. An enemy would find themselves trapped in a dark, unfamiliar maze, cut off from their own reinforcements, while the people of Derinkuyu remained safe in the depths. It turned the entire city into a series of nested vaults. This was not just a door, it was a tactical instrument, a way to control the flow of a conflict and dictate its terms entirely on their own ground. The very rock they had excavated became their ultimate shield, a passive defense so effective it required no constant guard, only the strength to roll the stone when the moment came. This reveals a mindset of profound, calculated caution, where every connection between spaces was also a potential point of severance. With these stones in place, the city could transform in an instant from an open community into an impregnable series of sealed strongholds. Yet, such extreme measures of isolation raise a deeper question. What was the nature of the threat that required this level of paranoid ingenuity? Who were they so desperately hiding from? And what historical storm left such a permanent mark of fear carved in stone? The identity of the builders is a puzzle written in stone, yet missing its signature. For decades, the most popular narrative pointed to early Christian communities, seeking refuge from Roman authorities in the first centuries of the Common Era. The presence of chapels with carved crosses and historical records of persecution in the region made this a compelling story. It fit perfectly, a tale of faith finding shelter in the earth. But as archaeologists looked closer, the timeline began to fray. The sheer scale and sophistication of Derinkuyu suggest something more than a hurried hideout. It hints at a project of generational patience, possibly begun long before those first Christians ever arrived. This opens the door to far older and more mysterious possibilities. Some scholars look to the Phrygians, an ancient Indo-European people who established a powerful kingdom in this region around the 8th century before the Common Era. They were known for their monumental rock-cut monuments and tombs, and the engineering prowess required for Derinkuyu aligns with their capabilities. Even more intriguing are whispers of a Hittite connection. The Hittite Empire was a Bronze Age superpower that dominated Anatolia nearly 4,000 years ago, around 2000 before the Common Era. They constructed vast underground complexes for storage and possibly for ritual, and their territory included Cappadocia. Could the first chisel strikes into the soft, tough rock have been made by Hittite hands, creating a foundational shelter later expanded by others? The frustrating and fascinating truth is that Derinkuyu itself holds no clear answer. No grand inscriptions name a king, no distinct artifacts from a single era are found in its foundational layers. This very absence is a clue in itself. It suggests that Derinkuyu is not the work of one people in one time, but rather a cumulative masterpiece. Think of it as a historical palimpsest, like an ancient parchment that was scraped clean and written over again and again. The soft volcanic rock was the perfect medium for this. One group, perhaps fleeing conflict, would carve out a basic shelter. Centuries later, another community facing a different threat would discover these caves and expand them, adding new levels, new doors, new ventilation shafts. Each generation left its mark, not with a plaque, but with the practical imprint of their needs, their fears, and their ingenuity. The Christian chapels are there, yes, but they may simply be the final chapters written in a book begun millennia earlier. This transforms Derinkuyu from a single civilization's project into something even more profound, a shared human instinct made manifest. Across ages and cultures, different peoples looked at the same soft rock and saw the same solution: sanctuary. They did not build a city from scratch, they added to a legacy of survival, deepening a promise of protection started by those they would never know. This continuity of purpose echoing through the dark may be the greatest mystery of all. What unbreakable thread of human experience connects the hands that first carved these rooms to the hands that last sealed its doors? A city can hold its breath, but it cannot go thirsty. While air flowed through clever shafts, the most vital resource of all, water, presented an even greater challenge for Derinkuyu's planners. A surface well in the courtyard would be a fatal vulnerability, an obvious target for a besieging enemy to poison or control. The solution they engineered was one of their most brilliant strokes, turning the very geology beneath them into a life-giving artery. Deep within the lower levels, they did not simply dig cisterns to collect seepage. Instead, they engineered precise wells that penetrated down through the rock to tap into natural subterranean aquifers, vast underground layers of water-bearing stone. This was not stored water, it was a living source, a secret river within the earth, completely independent of the world above. The placement was strategic genius. By locating these wells on the lowest floors, they utilized gravity itself as a silent, tireless servant. Water could be drawn up and then distributed upward through the city's levels with relative ease, ensuring that even the highest living quarters could access this secure supply. The engineering insight here is staggering. It reveals that these ancient builders possessed a sophisticated, though empirical, understanding of hydrogeology. They knew how to read the land, to predict where water would flow deep underground, and they had the skill to reach it through hundreds of feet of solid rock. This single feature fundamentally changed the nature of the sanctuary. With a secure air supply, vast food stores, and now an independent, renewable water source, Derinkuyu was no longer a temporary refuge. It was transformed into a truly self-sustaining ecosystem, a closed loop capable of supporting its massive population for months, or potentially even years, without a single foray into the hostile world above. This transforms our understanding of their preparedness. They were not just hiding from a passing army, they were preparing for the possibility that the surface itself might become permanently uninhabitable, whether through relentless conflict, ecological shift, or some other forgotten catastrophe. The well was more than a utility, it was a statement of profound independence, a declaration that life would continue, even if the sunlit world did not. Deep within the city's most secure levels, another kind of sanctuary was carefully carved. Alongside the storerooms and stables, archaeologists have uncovered spaces of quiet reflection, underground churches etched directly into the living rock. These are not afterthoughts but integral parts of the city's blueprint. We find cruciform chapels, their floor plans forming the shape of a cross, with simple altars and baptismal fonts hewn from the same stone as the walls. There are nave-like halls, spaces that clearly served for communal gathering. This tells us something profound about the people who lived here. Their planning went far beyond mere physical survival. They were ensuring the survival of their identity, their community, and their hope. In the profound darkness and pressure of a prolonged siege, where time blurs and the outside world feels like a lost memory, these spaces provided an anchor. They were a center for ritual, for marking the passages of life, for maintaining a sense of normalcy, and order when the world above had descended into chaos. The decision to place these churches on the deeper, more protected levels is especially telling. It wasn't just about safety from physical attack, it was about safeguarding the very heart of the community. Faith and the collective practice of it was clearly understood as a critical source of strength, a necessary sustenance for the human spirit during times of extreme hardship. These rooms were where people could gather not just for prayer, but for mutual support, to hear familiar stories, to sing together, and to remind each other of who they were and what they were enduring for. It transforms our understanding of Derinkuyu from a giant bunker into a true underground civilization. They weren't just building a shelter for bodies, they were meticulously preserving an entire way of life, carrying their culture with them into the earth. This holistic vision of refuge tending to the soul as diligently as the body reveals a resilience that is both heartbreaking and awe-inspiring. It makes you wonder what hymns echoed through those stone halls, and what promises were whispered in the dark that gave 20,000 people the courage to wait for a dawn they could not see. But the story does not end at Derinkuyu's deepest well. This city was not a solitary fortress, but a single node in a vast, hidden web. Across the Cappadocian landscape, archaeologists have now identified over 200 separate underground settlements, ranging from small family refuges to other sprawling complexes. Derinkuyu's closest sibling lies just 5 miles to the south, the underground city of Cappadocia. While slightly smaller, Cappadocia is a labyrinth in its own right, descending 8 levels and built with the same ingenious features: ventilation shafts, rolling stone doors, and chapels carved into the rock. The existence of these two giants so close together raises an immediate question: were they connected? Local legend and persistent archaeological theory suggest a breathtaking answer: yes. A long subterranean tunnel, wide enough for 3 people to walk abreast, is believed to have once snaked through the bedrock between Derinkuyu and Cappadocia. This was not merely a hidden passage, it was a strategic artery. In times of crisis, it would have allowed for the movement of people, the sharing of supplies, and the reinforcement of defenses between the 2 population centers. This transforms our understanding completely. We are no longer looking at isolated shelters, but at a coordinated regional defense network of a scale and sophistication that rewrites ancient history. Imagine the logistical planning this required, a shared blueprint for survival understood across communities. If a threat emerged near Derinkuyu, its inhabitants could theoretically retreat through the tunnel toward Cappadocia, consolidating their strength. Resources from one city's deeper stores could sustain the other. It created a fluid, adaptable defensive landscape where the entire population of a region could, quite literally, vanish from the surface world, becoming a ghost society moving silently beneath the feet of any invader. This network suggests a common, pervasive, and terrifying threat, one so formidable that multiple cities invested generations of labor not just in hiding themselves, but in linking their fates together underground. The very earth beneath Cappadocia was hollowed out into a prepared sanctuary, a permanent alternative geography for when the world above became too dangerous. This level of preparation points to a long memory of hardship, a collective trauma so deep it became etched not just into stone, but into the very structure of the land itself. What could have cast such a long and fearful shadow over this entire region, uniting different peoples across centuries in a single, monumental act of subterranean defiance? The silence of a sealed city is broken only by the most fundamental need, hunger. To sustain 20,000 souls in perpetual darkness, the architects of Derinkuyu engineered not just space but time itself, captured in the form of food. Scattered throughout the middle levels, far from the dampness of the wells, are vast chambers with a singular purpose: storage. These are not simple closets, but colossal, cathedral-like rooms carved with smooth, rounded walls to maximize space and minimize moisture collection. Here, in the cool, dry, and perfectly stable embrace of the earth, the city's lifeline was secured. The volcanic Tuff rock provided a natural and constant temperature, acting as a giant, passive refrigerator that could preserve grains, dried legumes, nuts, and salt-cured meats for years on end. This was a technology of patience, using the Earth's own properties to defeat decay. The scale of these pantries is staggering. To fill them would have required the coordinated labor of an entire region above ground, a society diligently working in sunlight to stockpile a shadow future. Archaeologists have found clues to the meticulous organization within, from simple stone benches and ledges that served as shelves to the remnants of pottery containers and the soot marks of oil lamps on the ceilings. These lamps are a telling detail. They suggest not just storage but active management. Caretakers would have needed light to take inventory, to rotate stock, and to carefully ration the community's most precious resource. Each barrel of grain, each jar of oil, represented a day of continued life, a unit of hope measured in calories. By calculating the volume of these storage chambers and comparing it to the estimated caloric needs of a large population, researchers can make educated guesses about the siege durations the builders envisioned. The numbers point to a preparation for disruptions lasting not weeks, but many months, potentially even years. This transforms our understanding of their fear. They were not hiding from a passing raid. They were preparing for the possibility that the world above might fall silent for a generation, that the very concept of a harvest might become a memory. These silent, cool rooms are the starkest evidence of a civilization that looked into an uncertain future and made a simple, profound calculation to carry the abundance of the sun into the depths because they could not be sure when they would see it again. But a stockpile of grain is just potential energy. It must be transformed into the shared warmth of a meal to sustain a community. Deep within Derinkuyu's middle levels, archaeologists have uncovered the social heart of this underground world, the communal kitchens. These are not small family hearths, but large, open chambers containing multiple fire pits, their walls darkened by centuries of soot. Here, in the flickering light, the practical reality of life for 20,000 people comes into sharp focus. Food preparation was a centralized, organized operation. Designated cooks would have worked together, using the shared hearths to prepare large batches of stews, porridges, and baked goods from the communal stores. This system was about far more than efficiency. It was about fairness and control. In a sealed environment where every ounce of food was a counted resource, centralizing its distribution prevented hoarding and ensured that every individual, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, received their necessary share. The smell of cooking bread would have drifted through the connected tunnels, a universal signal of care and normalcy, perhaps the most powerful psychological anchor in that sunless existence. Adjacent to these kitchen areas, the living quarters reveal how space was meticulously managed. Families did not have private houses, but were allocated modest rooms or suites carved directly off main corridors. These spaces are simple, often just a main chamber with sleeping platforms carved into the walls and small niches for personal belongings. Privacy, as we understand it, was a luxury surrendered for the greater good. The design instead forced interaction and mutual dependence. You would know your neighbors intimately, you would hear their conversations, share their challenges. This enforced closeness, while undoubtedly stressful at times, forged a powerful social cohesion. It turned a collection of individuals into a single organism with a shared pulse. Further evidence of a functioning society comes from small, telling artifacts like loom weights made of baked clay. These simple discs, used to tension threads on a vertical loom, tell us that even underground, the basic economic functions of life continued. People were not just waiting, they were working, producing textiles for clothing and blankets. Other areas were likely set aside for tool maintenance, repair work, and even the education of children, passing down stories and skills in the dim lamplight. This intricate social machinery is what truly separated a living community from a desperate crowd in a hole. Derinkuyu's inhabitants were not merely surviving the darkness, they were actively building a society within it, maintaining the rhythms of work, learning, and shared meals that define a civilization. They understood that to endure a long confinement, you must preserve not just the body but the very fabric of human connection. The silent society carved into the earth was built upon a geological gift. Every corridor, every chapel, every rolling stone door exists because of a single, extraordinary material, the soft volcanic rock known as tuff. This is the canvas upon which the entire underground world was etched. Cappadocia's surreal, moon-like landscape above ground, with its famous ferry chimneys, is the direct result of immense volcanic eruptions millions of years ago. These cataclysms blanketed the region in a thick layer of volcanic ash, which over eons compressed and solidified into a stone that is both stable and surprisingly workable. It possesses a unique duality. It is hard enough to hold the weight of 18 stacked levels without collapsing, yet soft enough to be shaped with the simple hand tools of the ancient world: bronze chisels, stone hammers, and wooden picks. This perfect balance made the impossible possible. If the bedrock had been impenetrable granite, the project would have been unimaginable. If it had been crumbly sandstone, the city would have caved in on itself. Tuff was the Goldilocks stone, just right for a civilization with the will, but not the machinery, to dig deep. Beyond its carvability, Tuff provided another critical advantage: natural climate control. This porous rock is a superb insulator. While the surface of Cappadocia bakes under a summer sun or freezes in winter winds, the temperature deep within the tuff remains remarkably constant, hovering around a cool, stable 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. This was not just a comfort, it was a survival technology. That constant chill acted as a natural refrigerator, preserving the massive food stores we discussed, preventing spoilage for months on end. It also created a livable environment for thousands of people packed closely together, mitigating the heat and humidity that would have otherwise made the lower chambers stifling and unhealthy. The very rock they were hiding within was actively working to protect them, regulating their environment in a way no ancient technology could. This geological coincidence underscores a profound truth about human innovation. Our greatest leaps are often not born in a vacuum, but are a dialogue with our environment. The people of this region looked at their soft, insulating rock and saw not just a landscape, but an opportunity. They recognized a pre-built shelter waiting to be revealed, a fortress provided by the planet itself. The tuff did not just enable Derinkuyu, it inspired it, whispering of a sanctuary that could be shaped from the inside out. This partnership between geology and genius raises a final, haunting question. If the rock itself was the perfect protector, what was happening on the surface that made its embrace so desperately necessary? Even the most determined invader, having breached a rolling stone door, would step into a trap far more disorienting than any wall. The layout of Derinkuyu is not a logical grid, but a calculated labyrinth. The tunnels are intentionally narrow, forcing attackers to move in single file, unable to wield weapons effectively or see more than a few feet ahead. They twist and turn without apparent reason, branching unexpectedly into dead ends that waste precious time and fuel panic. In some places, a corridor might appear to continue, only to drop away suddenly into a deep, unmarked shaft, a silent pitfall in the absolute dark. This was not poor planning, it was psychological warfare carved in stone. For a defender who knew every turn and hazard, these passages were a familiar home. For an enemy, they were a suffocating maze designed to dissolve cohesion and morale. A large force would quickly become fragmented, its communication broken by the serpentine corridors. Small groups, isolated and lost, would be vulnerable to ambush from hidden side passages or from above, where defenders could strike from carved openings in the ceiling. This transformed every square foot of the city into a defensive asset, turning the very confusion of the space into a weapon. The builders were not just thinking about walls and doors, they were engineering the experience of the invader, weaponizing disorientation and fear. It reveals a security strategy that operated on 4 dimensions: length, width, depth, and the terrifying dimension of the mind. To walk those halls as an outsider was to be stripped of all certainty, left alone with the echoing dark and the certain knowledge that unseen eyes were watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This architectural cunning suggests a deep, hard-won understanding of siegecraft, born from a history where survival depended on outthinking a relentless foe in the most intimate and claustrophobic of battlegrounds. The soft, tough rock offered a perfect hiding place, but history provided the desperate reason to use it. Cappadocia was not a quiet backwater. It was an ancient highway, a fertile valley squeezed between rival powers for thousands of years. To live here was to accept a brutal reality. Your home was not yours alone. It was a prize others would constantly try to take. This landscape witnessed the heavy tread of Assyrian war chariots, the disciplined march of Persian immortals, and the sweeping conquests of Alexander the Great's phalanxes. Later came the legions of Rome, followed by the cavalry of Arab caliphates, and eventually the storm from the east, the Mongol hordes. Each wave brought a new language, a new flag, and the same old story of displacement and loss for the people rooted to this soil. For the local farmers and merchants, these were not distant historical events. They were the recurring seasons of their lives, as predictable and as devastating as a locust swarm. Their wealth was not in gold or palaces, but in the grain in their fields, the wine in their cellars, and the livestock in their pens, exactly the kind of plunder an invading army sought to feed itself. To stand and fight a professional army on the open plain was suicide, yet to flee into the hills meant abandoning everything that sustained their families. They needed a third option, a way to take their entire world with them when danger arrived. This is the profound, practical genius of Derinkuyu and its sister cities. They are not monuments to paranoia, but the logical, hardened fruit of a collective memory steeped in insecurity. When the dust cloud appeared on the horizon, signaling yet another army on the march, the response was not panic but a practiced drill. Herders would drive animals down the ramps, families would carry their most precious belongings, and community leaders would oversee the movement of grain sacks from above-ground storage into the deep chambers. Within hours, the entire population could vanish, leaving behind empty villages that offered no sustenance to the conqueror. The massive stone doors would roll shut, sealing in a breathable, watered, and stocked world, while on the surface, frustrated invaders found only ghost towns and sealed holes in the ground. Derinkuyu, therefore, is more than a city. It is a preserved moment of human decision-making under immense pressure. It is the ultimate expression of a community choosing to bend rather than break, to retreat in order to preserve, investing generations of labor into buying a single, precious commodity: continuity. In its dark halls, we see the physical answer to a question asked by countless vulnerable people throughout time. How do you outlast a storm when you cannot stop the wind? The challenge of waste is a silent, relentless force that can undo any sanctuary. For 20,000 souls sealed within a mountain of stone, managing what the body leaves behind was not a mere inconvenience. It was a matter of life and death, a biological siege from within. In the deep quiet of Derinkuyu, archaeologists have found evidence of a solution as practical as it was essential: a rudimentary but thoughtfully designed waste management system. Certain narrow shafts and sloping tunnels, distinct from the fresh air vents and water wells, are believed to have served this most basic civic function. Their purpose was to channel waste away from the living quarters, the communal kitchens, and most critically, the precious water supply, directing it instead into deep, isolated pits or porous layers of rock where it could slowly filter away without contaminating the closed environment. This was a simple yet profound act of foresight. In the crowded, confined darkness where air was shared and space was precious, a failure of sanitation would have invited disaster, leading to the rapid spread of illness that could cripple the entire community. The builders understood this invisible threat. Their planning acknowledges a fundamental truth of civilization, that public health is built not just on medicine, but on infrastructure, even when that infrastructure is carved by hand into the bedrock. While surface cities throughout history, even great empires, have often grappled with filth and plague, the people of Derinkuyu engineered their refuge with this challenge in mind from the very beginning. They gave as much consideration to the outflow of waste as they did to the inflow of air and water, creating a balanced, sustainable system. This attention to the unglamorous, yet utterly vital, details of daily life is perhaps one of the strongest testaments to their comprehensive vision. It transforms the city from a dramatic hideout into a meticulously planned habitat. They were not just digging a hole to crawl into, they were designing a functioning, long-term ecosystem for human life, accounting for every stage of existence, from the spiritual comfort of their chapels to the most basic physical necessities. It reveals a civic mindset, a collective understanding that the health of one was inseparable from the health of all, and that true security meant protecting the community from every kind of threat, even those born from within its own walls. The cross-shaped chapels carved deep within the rock point to a specific chapter in this long story. For many, the most compelling narrative is one of faith seeking sanctuary from persecution. During the 2nd to 4th centuries of the Common Era, as the Roman Empire periodically sought to suppress the growing Christian faith, communities across Anatolia faced immense pressure. Historical records from the time describe believers holding secret services in caves, catacombs, and remote places, out of sight of imperial authorities. Cappadocia itself was an early and vibrant center of Christian thought, home to influential theologians. In this context, a place like Derinkuyu would have been more than a shelter, it would have been a godsend. The existing underground framework, perhaps begun by earlier peoples, could be expanded by these communities into a perfect secret refuge. Here, they could live, worship, and preserve their way of life completely hidden from the world above. The rolling stone doors were not just defenses against armies, but against informants and Roman patrols. The ventilation shafts brought down not only air, but news from the surface, whispers of whether it was safe to emerge. The communal kitchens and chapels would have fostered a powerful sense of solidarity, binding the community together through shared ritual and shared risk. This theory powerfully connects the physical evidence to a well-documented human drama. It gives names, in spirit if not in stone, to the hands that smoothed these walls and knelt in these chapels. They were not anonymous diggers, but families, priests, and farmers, holding fast to their beliefs against formidable earthly power. Their story transforms the silent city from an engineering marvel into a monument of quiet defiance, a testament to the lengths to which people will go to protect the core of their identity. It is a narrative that resonates deeply, reminding us that sometimes the most profound strength is found not in rising to fight, but in descending with hope to wait. Yet not every chamber in the city was designed for a purpose we can easily name. Scattered among the familiar living quarters and storerooms are rooms that defy simple explanation. These spaces possess an odd, almost intentional strangeness. Some have unusual carvings on the walls, not the clear Christian crosses found in the chapels, but patterns of lines, spirals, or symbols that predate that era. Others are shaped in peculiar ways, perhaps perfectly circular or with niches arranged in a non-functional manner. A few exhibit strange acoustic properties, where a whisper in one corner can be heard with startling clarity in another, suggesting a space designed for listening, for oration, or for chant. Their layouts do not suit storage as they lack shelves, nor do they match the typical family dwelling. So what were they for? Archaeologists walk these rooms with a sense of quiet curiosity, piecing together possibilities. They might have been council chambers where community leaders met in secret to make the difficult decisions governing life in the deep. They could have been schools where children gathered in the lamplight to learn the stories and skills of their hidden world, their lessons echoing off the intentionally shaped stone. Or perhaps they served rituals that belonged to a spiritual life far more complex than we assume. While the Christian chapels are evident, these older, more cryptic rooms hint at a different layer of belief. They may connect to the pagan traditions of the very first builders, the Phrygians or Hittites, for whom caves and underground spaces were often sacred portals to the underworld, places of initiation and communion with older gods. The presence of such spaces suggests a cultural continuity, a blending of traditions where newer faiths did not simply erase the old, but sometimes built upon them, literally and spiritually, within the safety of the mountain. These enigmatic rooms are a humbling reminder. We are interpreting this ancient refuge through a modern, practical lens, seeing kitchens, stables, and doors. But the full inner life of its inhabitants, their unique customs, their underground-specific holidays, their songs for the sun they missed, their ceremonies for births and passings in perpetual twilight, that vibrant, intangible culture has evaporated like breath in a dark corridor. We see the stone shell, but the spirit that animated it is gone. This loss adds a final, profound layer of mystery to the engineering marvel. We can comprehend how they survived, but we can only wonder at what they felt, what they believed, and what secret words were spoken in those oddly shaped rooms that the mountain keeps forever to itself. Derinkuyu's story is not entirely alone in the annals of hidden architecture, yet when placed side by side with other famous subterranean havens, its singular nature comes into sharp relief. Consider the immense Maginot Line forts of the Second World War, or the vast underground city beneath Beijing. These later constructions are feats of modern engineering, built with reinforced concrete, steel, and electric lighting, designed for a specific, well-understood type of conflict. They are military installations, logical extensions of the warfare of their time. Derinkuyu emerges from a completely different world. It was not built with blueprints and bulldozers, but with chisels, hammers, and generations of patient labor. Its purpose was not to counter a particular tank or bomb, but to serve as a universal sanctuary against an array of existential threats, a multi-purpose shelter for whatever calamity the surface might unleash. Whether facing invading armies, periods of intense religious persecution, or even the slow creep of a changing climate that made the land less hospitable, the city offered the same profound solution: disappear and endure. This generality of purpose is key. Where a modern bunker has a defined enemy, Derinkuyu was built against the very concept of an unsafe outside world. Its scale for its pre-industrial era remains almost incomprehensible. To carve out a space for 20,000 people without dynamite, without cranes, using only muscle and simple metal tools, represents a communal effort unmatched in the ancient world. This comparison ultimately places Derinkuyu in a category of its own. It is not merely a large cave system or a military redoubt. It is a pre-industrial, civic-scale survival bunker, a whole functioning society inverted into the earth. It stands as perhaps the purest, most monumental architectural expression of a universal human impulse, the will to preserve the community itself against unknown and omnipresent dangers, to ensure that no matter what happened above, the story of its people would not reach a final page. Even the animals had their designated sanctuary within the mountain. On the upper levels of Derinkuyu, closest to the surface air and light, the architects carved out expansive stables, complete with tethering rings set directly into the stone walls. This was not an afterthought, but a core strategic feature of the city's blueprint. In a crisis, herds of goats, sheep, and cattle could be driven down the ramps in minutes, securing a living, breathing resource base underground. The placement was a masterstroke of integrated design. These upper chambers, with their easier access to ventilation shafts, managed the animals' needs while turning their presence into an asset for the humans below. The body heat generated by the livestock rose and was gently pulled down through the city's clever airflow system, taking the slight, natural warmth into the deeper human living quarters. This passive heating in the constant cool of the earth would have provided a small but vital comfort, a physical reminder of the sun-warmed world left behind. More importantly, the animals represented a renewable engine of survival. They provided a continuous supply of fresh milk, which could be made into cheese and yogurt for long-term storage. Their wool and hair were crucial for clothing and blankets in the perpetual chill. They offered the potential for meat, though likely reserved for special occasions or extreme need, and their labor could be used for turning millstones to grind grain stored in the adjacent chambers. This seamless incorporation of livestock reveals a profound ecological understanding. The builders were not just planning for people, they were planning for an entire microeconomy, a closed-loop system where every element supported another. The animals consumed waste plant matter and in return provided food, warmth, and materials, their very breath contributing to the atmospheric balance of the sealed city. It shows a vision of sustainability that looks remarkably modern in its holistic thinking. They engineered not just a shelter, but a working homestead inverted into the earth, ensuring that life, in all its interdependent forms, could persist and even flourish in the deep, waiting dark. The soft, tough walls that withstood centuries of silence now face a new and constant presence, the gentle breath of countless visitors. Since its modern rediscovery, Derinkuyu has been carefully opened to the world, with roughly half of its 18 levels made accessible for exploration. This decision, born of a desire to share a wonder, created a profound modern dilemma. How do you preserve a sanctuary built from fragile rock while inviting the public inside? Every footstep, every exhalation of moisture, and the warmth from thousands of bodies subtly alter the delicate microclimate that had been perfectly stable for ages. The very softness that made the city possible now makes it vulnerable to the slow, loving erosion of its own fame. Conservationists are engaged in a quiet, ongoing battle to stabilize the structure. They monitor humidity and temperature with sensitive instruments, reinforce weakened passages with discrete supports, and carefully manage the flow of visitors through its ancient corridors. The goal is a fragile equilibrium, allowing people to witness this marvel while ensuring it remains for future generations to witness as well. Derinkuyu's greatest threat is no longer a besieging army, but the collective curiosity of a peaceful world. Its story now forces us to confront a universal question about our shared history. How do we protect our most irreplaceable sites, not from malice but from admiration? The city's modern chapter is a testament to its enduring power to captivate, proving that its deepest challenge may be surviving the very wonder it inspires. The silent stone chambers of Derinkuyu hold more than just the echoes of footsteps. Scattered across its levels, often tucked into carved niches or found in the dust of a collapsed corridor, lie the small, tangible traces of the people who called this place home. These artifacts, though looted and scattered over the centuries, are like fingerprints left in the dark, each one telling a quiet story of the hands that last held it. Archaeologists have recovered a humble but revealing collection, from the heavy, smooth grindstones used to crush grain into flour, to the simple, sturdy pottery that held water and food. The most common finds are the small clay oil lamps, their spouts blackened from use, designed to cast a fragile, flickering light against the overwhelming dark. Each lamp represents a tiny island of warmth and visibility, a personal sun for a family in their subterranean room. Then there are the crosses, carved into walls or fashioned into pendants, confirming the spiritual anchor we sensed in the chapels. But perhaps the most telling clues of all are the coins. Stray coins from the Roman era, later Byzantine issues, even older pieces. They are accidental timekeepers. Unlike inscriptions meant to last, these were lost by chance, dropped in a corridor or forgotten in a storage niche. Their mint dates provide hard chronological pins on the soft fabric of the city's long history, helping scholars map waves of occupation and use across the centuries. Together, this assemblage paints a remarkably consistent picture. The artifacts speak overwhelmingly of domesticity and devotion, of grinding meal, drawing water, and praying by lamplight. The notable scarcity of weapons is itself a powerful statement. It reinforces that Derinkuyu's primary strategy was not martial defiance, but profound disappearance. The goal was to become ghosts, to remove every target and incentive for conflict, not to wage a war from the depths. Each broken pot handle, each worn coin, each soot-stained lamp is a puzzle piece. Individually, they are fragments, but patiently assembled. They allow us to slowly transform these silent, empty rooms back into spaces humming with the quiet industry of ancient daily life. A life deliberately hidden, yet stubbornly persistent. The carved handles and niches are not just functional, they are a silent language of style, and some archaeologists believe they speak with a much older accent. When examining certain architectural details deep within Derinkuyu, a few researchers note similarities with the stone-working traditions of civilizations that flourished more than 1,000 years before the Common Era. This observation fuels a compelling and radical theory that the first chisel marks in this rock may not belong to early Christians, but to the shadowy empires of the Bronze Age. One prime candidate is the Hittites, a formidable power centered in Anatolia around 2000 before the Common Era. They were renowned as master builders and engineers, constructing massive fortifications and carving elaborate underground complexes, often for storage and ritual. Their world collapsed in a period of great upheaval around 1200 before the Common Era, a chaotic time linked to the mysterious migrations of groups historians call the Sea Peoples. As the Hittite heartland faced invasion and societal fracture, could a distant, vulnerable outpost in Cappadocia have responded by digging deep, creating a communal refuge to weather the storm? The architectural parallels some see, like specific forms of carved storage niches and the sheer ambition of tunneling, suggest it is a possibility. Another ancient people, the Phrygians, who rose to prominence after the Hittite decline, are also strong contenders. They are famous for their monumental rock-cut facades, like the magnificent Midas monument, proving they possessed the skill and cultural inclination to shape mountainsides on a grand scale. Their kingdom, too, faced constant pressure from powerful neighbors like the Assyrians. If either of these hypotheses holds true, it fundamentally transforms the story of Derinkuyu. It would no longer be a project of a single era, but a seed of survival planted in a mythic age. The initial chambers, carved by Hittite or Phrygian hands in response to a forgotten crisis, would have stood empty for centuries, a secret known only to local memory. Then, a new people facing a different kind of threat would have rediscovered these ready-made foundations and expanded them, adding their own layers, their own doors, their own chapels. This vision presents Derinkuyu not as a single city, but as a living tradition in stone, a shared solution passed down through millennia. Each generation did not have to invent the idea of hiding, they merely inherited it, deepening and adapting a sanctuary that was always there, waiting in the dark for the next civilization that needed to disappear. This profound absence of natural light would have reshaped every facet of human experience. For months or even years on end, the inhabitants of Derinkuyu lived in a world of permanent twilight, a reality defined not by the sun's arc but by the flickering glow of oil lamps and the deep, resonant dark between them. The sensory landscape was one of profound constancy, the cool, mineral smell of damp rock, the earthy scent of animals from the upper stables, the faint, sharp odor of burning olive oil, and the ever-present murmur of voices echoing through stone corridors. In such an environment, the traditional markers of time and individual space dissolved. There were no windows to watch the seasons change, no private yards, no horizon to offer perspective. The mind, deprived of its external anchors, would have turned inward and toward the community with an intensity we can scarcely comprehend. The architects understood this invisible danger. The very design of the city, with its prominent churches and large communal halls, was a psychological masterstroke, a built-in antidote to the creeping despair of isolation and sensory deprivation. These spaces were not luxuries, they were essential infrastructure for the human spirit. Within them, the community could gather to perform the rituals that gave life meaning: baptisms, weddings, communal prayers. Storytellers would have become vital keepers of memory and hope, their voices weaving tales of the sun-drenched world above, of past heroes, and of a future return. Social roles and daily routines would have taken on heightened importance, providing a crucial sense of structure and normalcy in a world stripped of its natural rhythms. The simple act of sharing a meal in the communal kitchen, of working together to grind grain or weave cloth, reinforced the bonds of mutual dependence and reminded each person they were part of a whole. This was the city's deepest engineering triumph, not carved in rock, but woven into the fabric of its society. Derinkuyu stands as one of history's most profound experiments in human resilience, a testament not just to our ability to survive physical threats, but to our profound need to nurture meaning, connection, and light within ourselves when the outer world goes dark. The sheer volume of stone removed to create Derinkuyu is almost beyond human comprehension. To carve out space for 20,000 people, the builders had to excavate an estimated 1 million cubic meters of solid rock. Picture hauling away enough material to fill 400 Olympic-sized swimming pools, but doing it entirely by hand, in near darkness, with the simplest of tools. This was not the work of a single king's decree, but a slow, relentless tide of human effort that likely rose and fell across dozens of generations. The primary tools were iron picks and chisels, stone hammers, and wooden wedges that could be driven into cracks and soaked with water to split the soft tuff. Workers, likely organized into teams, would have swung these picks in the close, dusty air, their muscles straining against the unyielding stone. Each chunk of rock was then gathered into baskets or leather sacks and carried up long, sloping ramps to the surface, a Sisyphean task repeated millions of times. But brute force alone would not have sufficed. The true genius lay in the planning that prevented this hollowed-out mountain from collapsing in on itself. Master architects, or perhaps elders with hard-won experience, would have directed the work with an intuitive understanding of structural engineering. They left thick pillars of untouched rock at regular intervals to act as natural supports for the ceilings above. They carved rooms with rounded corners and arched ceilings, shapes that distributed weight more effectively than sharp, right-angled corners. The layout itself, with its staggered levels and interconnected chambers, created a honeycomb structure that lent incredible strength to the whole. This meticulous, patient work speaks of a society that viewed this project not as a temporary job, but as its most vital, ongoing legacy. The investment of centuries of labor, of countless lifetimes spent chiseling in the dark, represents a communal priority so absolute it dwarfs our modern understanding of a public works project. It means that for hundreds of years, the most skilled hands in the community were directed not toward building grand temples or palaces under the sun, but toward deepening a hole in the ground. This unanimous, generational focus reveals a motivation more powerful than any single enemy or temporary conflict. It was a foundational belief, etched into the bedrock itself, that true security lay not in what they built upon the land, but in what they carved out from beneath it. The city is, in its entirety, a physical prayer for continuity, a mountain turned inside out by the collective will of a people determined that their story would not end. The city's deepest mystery is not why it was built, but why it was ever left behind. For centuries, Derinkuyu pulsed with life during times of crisis, a heartbeat in the stone only to fall silent again. Then one day that silence became permanent. The massive rolling stones were set in place for a final time, the last oil lamp guttered out, and the echoes of footsteps faded from the corridors. Archaeologists found no signs of a violent end, no evidence of a breached door or a final, desperate stand. The city was not conquered, it was simply walked away from. This peaceful abandonment is perhaps the most puzzling chapter of all. What could possibly compel a community to turn its back on such a monumental, generations-deep insurance policy? The answer lies not in a single event, but in the slow, turning tides of history itself. The very threats that made the underground essential began to recede. With the Christianization of the Roman Empire under Constantine in the 4th century, the intense persecutions that may have driven faithful communities underground gave way to an era where their faith was not just tolerated, but became the official religion of the state. The surface world, for the first time in living memory, began to transform from a place of danger into a place of potential sanctuary. Later, during the long span of the Byzantine Empire, Cappadocia experienced periods of relative stability and fortified surface settlements. While conflict certainly arose, the existential, recurring panic that demanded a full societal disappearance may have lessened. The calculus of survival gradually shifted. The profound hardship of life in the deep dark, the chill, the lack of sunlight, the cramped quarters, now had to be weighed against a surface life that, while not perfectly safe, offered the incomparable gifts of fresh air, open fields, and the sun on one's face. The generations born underground likely dreamed of that light, while the elders who remembered its dangers passed on. Eventually, the weight of that dream outweighed the old fears. The decision to abandon Derinkuyu was likely not a single, dramatic exodus, but a gradual migration. Families may have begun spending more time above, maintaining homes in new, fortified villages, using the old city only as a storeroom or a place of last resort. Over decades, the connection thinned. The final inhabitants probably closed the great doors out of habit, or perhaps a sense of ritual, not knowing they would be the last. They left behind a perfect fortress because at long last they no longer needed a fortress at all. This is the city's quiet, hopeful secret. Its ultimate purpose was to make itself obsolete. Derinkuyu stands as a monument not to perpetual fear, but to a community's resilience that finally allowed it to outgrow its own magnificent shell, choosing the uncertain, vibrant light of the world above over the perfect, silent safety of the world below. Derinkuyu's profound mystery has not been confined to history books. Its silent, monumental halls have echoed into our modern myths, becoming a powerful magnet for speculation and storytelling. In the realm of alternative history, the city is often presented not as a human achievement, but as proof of something lost. Some theorists point to its scale and precision, asking how a pre-industrial society could possibly accomplish such a feat. Their answer leans toward a forgotten advanced civilization, perhaps survivors of a legendary global event, who possessed lost technologies or knowledge. In these narratives, Derinkuyu becomes a refuge from a great cataclysm, a flood or some other planetary reset, built by enlightened predecessors to preserve a select few. While mainstream archaeology finds no evidence for these claims, viewing the city as a cumulative human effort across millennia, the persistence of the theories is telling. They are not really about Derinkuyu's stones, but about our own longing. They reflect a deep human desire to find meaning in the inexplicable, to see a guiding hand in the chaos of history, and to believe that our ancestors were wiser or more prepared than the record suggests. This cultural afterlife extends far beyond conspiracy circles. The city's iconic form, that descent into a fortified earth, has made it a staple setting for the imagination. It appears in popular video games as the ultimate dungeon or survivor base, in novels as a secret repository of ancient lore, and in documentaries probing the edges of history. In each retelling, Derinkuyu is more than a location, it is a symbol. It represents the pinnacle of preparedness, the allure of hidden knowledge waiting to be uncovered, and a universal fantasy that resonates deeply within us. That fantasy is of a guaranteed safe place, a final redoubt carved into the planet itself, where one can wait out any storm raging on the surface. This symbolic power is perhaps Derinkuyu's greatest legacy. It has transcended its archaeological facts to become a shared story, a modern myth born from ancient rock. It answers a primal question not about the past, but about our present fears. What would you build if you knew a storm was coming? The city endures in our culture because on some level, we are still looking for the door to that shelter, hoping it is there, just beneath our feet, waiting to be found. The silent city carved into volcanic rock is not merely a relic of ancient fear. It is a masterclass in survival written in stone, one that speaks directly to our own age of rising seas and global uncertainty. Derinkuyu's true legacy lies not in its ingenious doors or deep wells, but in the profound philosophy of preparedness it embodies, a philosophy built on three unshakable pillars. The first is the staggering foresight of long-term planning. This was not a project for a single lifetime, but a generational covenant, a promise made by ancestors to their unborn descendants. It required a society to invest its greatest labors not in monuments for the present, but in an insurance policy for a future they hoped would never need it. In our modern world of quarterly reports and short election cycles, such patient, multi-generational vision feels almost alien, yet it is precisely what is demanded by challenges like climate change, which unfold over decades and centuries. The second pillar is holistic, sustainable design. The builders did not solve one problem in isolation. They understood that air, water, food, waste, and social structure were interconnected threads in a single tapestry of survival. A modern bunker stocked with canned goods but lacking a plan for mental health or community governance is only half a refuge. Derinkuyu shows us that true resilience engineering must account for the whole human experience, blending practical systems for the body with sacred spaces for the spirit. The final and most crucial lesson is the irreplaceable role of social cohesion. The massive rolling stone doors were formidable, but they were ultimately just objects. The real strength that held the city together through months of darkness was the trust between neighbors, the shared rituals in the underground chapels, and the collective commitment to a fair distribution of resources. In a crisis, the most advanced technology is worthless without a community that agrees on how to use it and who it serves. This is where Derinkuyu transcends its historical context to deliver a message of proactive hope. It is a monument not to paranoia, but to the profound human belief that through shared ingenuity, careful planning, and unwavering unity, a community can face down even the longest night. It reminds us that the most durable shelter we can ever build is not made of stone or steel, but of the bonds we forge with one another long before the storm arrives. Derinkuyu is a profound statement carved in stone, a message sent to us across the centuries. Its massive doors, deep wells, and labyrinthine halls are not just features of a shelter. They are the vocabulary of a civilization having a serious conversation with its own survival. This community looked at a world filled with unpredictable threats and made a radical, collective choice. They would not flee across the land, they would retreat into it. They chose to dig in, to invest generations of labor in a sanctuary that turned the very earth beneath them into both shield and home. We have journeyed through its multi-level depths, feeling the cool, still air of its chapels and the strategic genius of its defensive corridors. We have pondered the mysteries of its many builders, from the possible hands of Bronze Age empires to the later faithful who etched crosses into the walls. And we have tried to feel the psychological weight of that existence, of raising families, maintaining hope, and preserving culture in a world of permanent twilight, where the sun was a memory and a shared story. This underground city does more than capture our historical curiosity. It holds up a mirror to our own values. It challenges us to ask, what do we hold so dear that we would protect it at any cost? What foundations of our community are worth such a monumental, patient effort to secure? Derinkuyu provides no easy answers, only the evidence of a people who asked themselves that same question and responded with 18 levels of determined stone. It stands as a timeless testament to human resilience and ingenuity, but more importantly, to the unbreakable will to survive not just as individuals, but as a connected whole. As we mentally ascend from those depths and return to our own sunlit world, let the silent story of this hidden city resonate. Let it remind us of the incredible depths of human preparedness, of the power that emerges when a community decides its future is non-negotiable. And let it inspire a recognition that sanctuary, that safe harbor for our shared humanity, can be found and forged in the most unexpected places, even in the quiet, cool dark beneath our feet.